The year is 152 BC. Roman Senator Cato the Elder enters the Senate Hall. He opens his hand and lets fresh figs roll across the marble floor. "Picked from Carthage 3 days ago," Cato said, as everyone tasted the short distance. The room heard what he meant. Carthage was too close for comfort. Close meant dangerous, but it also meant tempting. If figs traveled so fast, how quickly could war follow? You see, Cato was a veteran of the Second Punic War and a relentless enemy of Carthage. He had lived through Hannibal's 15-year campaign in Italy, an experience that left a deep mark on him and on Roman society as a whole. Decades later, now a respected senator, Cato was said to end nearly every speech with the same phrase, "Carthago Deleta Est," Carthage must be destroyed. Let's take a few steps back to 201 BC, when Rome ended the Second Punic War and wrote the rules. Carthage accepted hard terms: big payments, fewer ships, and no fighting without Rome's approval. In the following years, the North African city shifted to trade, rebuilt docks, and paid down debt. Next door, King Masinissa of Numidia grew strong with Rome's favor and edged into borderlands. He raided territories and took Punic pastures and wells. Carthage sent envoys, but Masinissa kept pressing. His riders simply treated boundary stones like movable furniture. Inside Carthage, leaders split. Merchants wanted calm, landowners wanted fields back. Veterans remembered both glory and cost. By mid-century, war debts were paid, while the Romans turned a blind eye to Masinissa's silent campaign. Carthage's petitions crossed the sea, but Rome's answers took the scenic route. In Rome, caution hardened as reports from their nearby provincial capital, Utica, praised Carthage's recovery. Back on the frontier, Carthage faced a narrow choice: keep writing letters while losing land, or pick up arms and break the rule that had kept peace with Rome. They chose to engage and faced the Numidians in a place named Oroscopa. In 150 BC, Carthage sent General Hasdrubal out with a large army, over 30,000 strong. The goal was to push the Numidians back and restore borders. But old Masinissa refused a clean battle and lured the column into rough ground with scarce water and poor forage. He set up a hilltop camp and waited. Gradually, Punic rations thinned, and sickness followed hunger. The Carthaginian force eventually surrendered, but during retreat, Numidian cavalry slashed into their ranks. Hasdrubal escaped, but his army was gone. The defeat at Oroscopa turned a border quarrel into a failed retaliation under a broken treaty. In response, Rome shaped an expedition and packed for a long stay. In early 149 BC, a Roman consular force sailed to Africa, meeting the council and demanding 300 noble youths as hostages. Carthage agreed. Ships took the youngsters and stood offshore. Next request was for total disarmament. Bring out weapons, war engines, and armor. Carthage complied and shipped out 200,000 sets of armor. Disarmament Day must have looked like a yard sale nobody enjoyed. Then the final order: leave the coast, settle more inland, let the port and walls be destroyed. This demand translated as, "Please, vanish." The city could not accept it. Punic refusal brought instant clarity. Rome had its cause and its army in place. War and siege started virtually at the same time. Rome surrounded Carthage with fleet and consular armies under Manius Manilius and Lucius Censorinus, but their initial direct assaults against outer quarters failed. Carthage organized sorties, often at night, to harass Roman supply lines and foragers. Meanwhile, the Romans tried to go over the walls without success. Their losses mounted without a lasting breach. The legion's strength was blunted by complacency and weak leadership. Many soldiers likely expected a short campaign, and to make matters worse, fever and disease swept through the ranks. Inside Carthage, workshops turned out arrows, spears, and shields to compensate for the surrendered armor. Food stayed adequate, but rationing began in some districts. At sea, Rome tried to close the harbor, but swirling currents and brave pilots kept some traffic moving. A few Punic supply ships slipped through. By autumn, the siege looked messy and stuck. No breach held, no gate stayed open. Disease and poor discipline blunted effort. Rome needed a commander who could turn a grind into a plan. From those Roman failures, Carthage prepared for a long defense, elevating Hasdrubal as central military voice. tightening watches and rations and enforcing order with swift rewards and punishments. Hasdrubal pushed active defense. Night sorties struck at Roman towers and pickets. Small boats tried short, risky trips along the coast to fetch supplies. The aim was to stretch every day, make Rome pay in time and effort for each yard, and make the siege untenable. By spring 148 BC, the city looked like a fortress learning its rhythm. Then attention shifted inland to Numidia, where 90-year-old Masinissa passed away after years of riding the stretched border. His death mattered to both camps. Rome dispatched Scipio Aemilianus, adopted grandson of Scipio Africanus, to supervise the inheritance negotiations. Already gaining a reputation as a capable soldier, he now proved himself an effective diplomat as well. Numidia stayed orderly and friendly to Rome. Hopes in Carthage for a fractured succession faded. Numidian riders and grain still served Rome's camps, and pressure steadied the siege. Scipio Aemilianus was now too prominent to ignore. Under mounting political pressure, the Senate made him consul and gave him command in Africa, even though he was younger than the law allowed. He started his mandate with order and discipline, cleaned the camps, rewarded good behavior. He paid the men on time and punished misdemeanor. Then he started ground operations. He led a night attack and managed to make a breach. However, he realized this position was untenable and retreated. Carthage started to feel the change in Roman leadership as well. Fewer sorties got through, supplies to the city slowed, and scouts found fewer gaps to exploit. By summer's end, the Romans bled less for each yard, and each yard stayed theirs. The grip tightened around Carthage. Scipio then turned to the waterfront. Late in 147 BC, Roman engineers began a massive breakwater mole across the harbor mouth, under constant Carthaginian fire. Inside the city, the Carthaginians cut a new channel from the inner harbor directly to the open sea. To Rome's surprise, Punic ships surged out and pushed for a breakthrough. For a moment, the balance flipped. Carthaginian rams scattered patrol ships, but the breakout eventually failed. The Roman fleet regrouped and forced withdrawal. Scipio pressed the leverage he gained as the breakwater mole neared closure. Each day at the waterfront grew more Roman and less Carthaginian. Inside the city, the message was plain. If the sea could not feed Carthage, only the granaries did, and they were not bottomless. Scipio then aimed to remove the field threat. Late in 147 BC, he marched south and struck Nepheris, where a Carthaginian force guarded approaches and grain tracks. The Romans seized heights and shattered resistance. With Nepheris gone, outside supplies and sorties died out for good. Carthage stood alone behind its walls. Scipio then turned back to the waterline, where his siege engines finally broke through. Once he managed to breach the harbor, the city's defense pulled inward. During the final advance, Roman squads broke into houses, cleared them, climbed to roofs, and repeated the pattern house by house. Fires followed their advance. Defenders fell back uphill toward the high citadel of Byrsa as crowds pressed and perished behind them. Hasdrubal surrendered in exchange for his freedom. 6 days after the harbor was breached, Carthage collapsed. The majority of its people were put to the sword, and the surviving 50,000 were marched away in chains. Then Rome had the city completely destroyed. The famous tale that Rome salted the ruins of Carthage is a myth. The idea would have been too costly and unnecessary. And so Cato's gesture involving a handful of figs signaled the spark that led to Carthage being torn down brick by brick. Under Roman rule, the city ruins remained silent for 100 years, when Emperor Augustus decided to rebuild it as a Roman city. So why did Rome really destroy Carthage? Well, mostly out of perceived strategic necessity, turbocharged by greed and wrapped in the rhetoric of revenge. It took Rome 118 years and 3 brutal wars to completely defeat Carthage and turn it to dust. Now they ruled over the western Mediterranean and turned its coastlines into fuel for their growing empire. The Punic Wars ended with Rome proving once and for all that revenge is a dish best served over 3 generations. But did Carthage really have to be deleted? Tell us your opinion in the comments below. And if this story held you to its last chapter, you will surely enjoy these other videos. Consider subscribing for more. The Reel of Time never stops. See you next time.